I've been sitting here for over an hour staring at this blank page, not knowing how to even begin. How do you condense nearly 2 decades of tangled emotions, betrayals, and what-ifs into words? How do you explain the kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from a stranger or a one-night fling, but from the people who were supposed to be your safe place? I grew up in a small Midwestern town in Indiana, where everyone knew everyone, and reputations stuck like glue. My best memories of childhood revolve around the boy next door, Ethan. His parents moved in when I was 8, and we were inseparable from day one. The kind of inseparable where summer meant bike rides to the lake, fireflies in jars, and whispered secrets on the swings after dark. To me, Ethan wasn't just a friend. He was it. My person. Even when we were kids, I knew. By the time we were 15, I'd already written his last name after mine, in the margins of my notebook more times than I could count. But here's the catch, I never told him. I was terrified that if I confessed, I'd ruin what we had. So instead I lived with this ache, watching him date random girls in high school while I stood on the sidelines, waiting for the day he'd look at me and finally see me for what I was, the girl who had loved him all along. By senior year I thought maybe it was finally happening. We'd gone to prom together, not as dates, but because both of us had split from our respective partners a month before. We danced. He kissed me on the cheek when he dropped me off. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep my hope alive. Then came college. I went to Purdue. He went to EUL. We stayed close, texting late at night, calling each other during finals, visiting on long weekends. I thought the distance might even make us realize we were meant for more. But that's when she entered the picture. My roommate Jenna. Jenna was everything I wasn't. Blonde where I was brunette, effortlessly social where I was more reserved, the kind of girl who could walk into a room and make everyone fall in love with her in 10 minutes flat. She wasn't cruel or malicious, at least not at first. She was my friend. My first real friend in college outside of Ethan. So of course, when Ethan came to visit one weekend, I introduced them. And that was the beginning of the end. At first it was harmless. She laughed at his dumb jokes and he laughed at hers. But then the texting started. Oh, Ethan just messaged me, he asked about you, conversations. The casual mentions of him when he wasn't around. And then, sophomore year, she sat me down and said the words that shattered me. I think I like Ethan. And I think he likes me too. I laughed. I actually laughed thinking she was kidding. But she wasn't. And worse, she wasn't wrong. Within a month, they were officially dating. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully, that I smiled and wished them well, but the truth is I went into a spiral. I cried every night for weeks. I avoided Ethan's calls. I stopped hanging out with Jenna as much. But no matter what, I couldn't escape it. They were everywhere, holding hands at parties, tagging each other in memes, plastered all over social media. My best friend. And the love of my life. Together. You'd think it couldn't get worse, but it did. Because Ethan kept insisting nothing had changed between us. He'd call me at 2 a.m. to vent about his classes or ask for advice when he fought with Jenna. He treated me like I was still his person, but every time he hung up, I was left with the sick realization that I was just the backup, the emotional crutch, while Jenna got the part of him I had dreamed about for years. And here's where the first twist comes in, one I didn't even see coming. The summer before our senior year, Ethan and Jenna invited me to spend a week with them at a lake house Jenna's family owned in Michigan. Against my better judgment, I went. I told myself I'd be fine, that I could play the cool friend. But halfway through the trip, something happened. Ethan kissed me. It wasn't some drunken accident. We weren't playing games or caught in a weird moment. It was deliberate. Late at night, sitting on the dock, watching the water ripple under the moonlight, he turned to me, said my name in that way he used to when we were kids, and then kissed me. And the worst part? I kissed him back. I don't even know how long it lasted. Seconds, maybe minutes. But it was enough. Enough to light every suppressed feeling on fire. Enough to make me think maybe, just maybe, the universe had finally realigned. Until the sound of footsteps broke us apart. It was Jenna. She had seen everything. And that single moment of weakness set off a chain of events that I never could have predicted. Events that would ruin friendships, destroy trust, and leave me questioning whether Ethan was really the person I thought he was all along. The silence after Jenna caught us was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just stood there on the dock, her arms wrapped around herself like she was freezing, even though it was late July. "Are you kidding me?" she whispered, her voice trembling more than her body. Ethan jumped up like he'd been burned, stammering something incoherent. "It's not what it looks like," the most cliché line imaginable, considering it was exactly what it looked like. I sat frozen, guilt and adrenaline mixing into something I couldn't name. My heart was still hammering from the kiss, but now it was for all the wrong reasons. Jenna turned on her heel and walked back to the house without another word. Ethan followed her, begging her to listen. And me? I stayed on that dock, hugging my knees, fighting the urge to vomit. The next morning, Jenna was gone. Packed her things, drove back to her parents early. No note, no confrontation. Just gone. Ethan acted like nothing happened, like we hadn't just detonated the bomb that was his relationship. We ate pancakes, we went tubing, he laughed with his friends. If someone had seen him, they'd never guess his girlfriend had left in tears less than 12 hours before. But at night when we were alone, he changed. He sat beside me on the couch, shoulders tense, staring at the floor. "I messed up," he said finally. "But I don't regret it. I should have walked away. I should have told him this was a mistake, that he needed to fix things with Jenna, or at least figure himself out before dragging me deeper into the mess. But instead, I said the words I'd been holding in for over a decade. I've loved you since we were kids." He didn't look shocked. He didn't pull away. He just exhaled, almost in relief, like he'd been waiting to hear me say it. From that night on, everything shifted. Ethan and Jenna broke up officially within a week. He called me constantly. We talked about what our future could look like, finishing college, maybe moving to Chicago together after graduation, finally giving ourselves a chance. For a few months it felt like a dream. Like all the waiting, all the years of being just friends, had finally paid off. I let myself believe I was the one he was meant to be with all along. But dreams have a way of curdling into nightmares. It started with small things. He'd cancel plans last minute, saying he was swamped with assignments, only for me to see photos of him out with his fraternity brothers. He'd dodge questions about whether he was still talking to Jenna. He'd tell me he wasn't ready to put a label on us, even though we were clearly acting like more than friends. The paranoia ate at me. I tried to push it down, tried to remind myself this was Ethan, my Ethan, the boy who used to bring me popsicles when I was sick. But late at night, doubts crept in like shadows I couldn't shake. And then came the night that changed everything. Again. It was October, a crisp Friday, the kind of night where the whole campus buzzed with tailgate energy. Ethan had promised to visit me at Purdue for the weekend. I spent hours cleaning my tiny apartment, cooking his favorite chili, buying the beer he liked. But as the night dragged on, there was no sign of him. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts showed as delivered but never read. At 1 a.m., I finally gave up and went to bed, angry and humiliated. The next morning, I woke to a storm of notifications. My stomach dropped when I opened Instagram. There he was. Ethan. At U.S. homecoming party. Arm around Jenna. I thought maybe I was hallucinating, that it was an old picture, but no, it was new. Jenna's caption made it worse. "Some bonds can't be broken heart." My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. The chili I'd made sat untouched in the fridge. I sat on the floor of my kitchen and sobbed until my throat was raw. When I finally confronted him, he swore it wasn't what it looked like. "We just talked," he insisted. "She showed up. I didn't invite her. It's over with her, I swear." Yeah, well. But I wasn't naive anymore. I could hear the lie in his voice, see it in the way he avoided my eyes. For the first time since childhood, I realized I didn't know Ethan as well as I thought. Maybe I never had. And that's when I made a decision I never imagined I'd make. I cut him off, blocked his number, unfollowed him, told myself I was done waiting for a boy who couldn't choose me fully, who wanted the best of both worlds at the cost of my sanity. I wish the story ended there, me finally standing up for myself, walking away with dignity. But life isn't that clean. Because months later, Ethan came back into my life in a way I never could have predicted. Not with flowers. Not with an apology. With a ring. On Jenna's finger. The first time I saw the ring, it was on Facebook. I was sitting in the library, half asleep over my laptop during finals week, when a notification popped up. A friend from back home had tagged me in a photo. Curious, I clicked, only to see Ethan on one knee in front of Jenna, holding a diamond ring that caught the sunlight like a cruel joke. The caption read, "She said yes. Congrats to Ethan and Jenna." Bye. I swear for a moment the world actually tilted. My vision blurred, and it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My roommate had to pull me outside because she thought I was having a panic attack. Ethan. My Ethan. The boy I'd waited for, kissed, dreamed about, cried over, was marrying her. I didn't sleep for days. My phone lit up with messages from people who knew the history between us. "Are you okay? Did you hear? Wow, that's gotta hurt." No one knew just how deep the knife went. Against my better judgment, I answered Ethan's call a week later. He sounded almost casual, like we hadn't just destroyed each other. "I wanted you to hear it from me," he said. I proposed. It just felt right. Jenna and we've been through a lot and she's been there for me. Then, I wanted to scream. She's been there for you? What about the decades I spent by your side? The secrets, the loyalty, the love I never wavered from? But all I could say was, congratulations. My voice cracked on the word, but he either didn't notice or didn't care. I didn't go to the wedding. I couldn't. But that didn't stop me from seeing the photos when mutual friends posted them. Jenna in a flowing lace gown, Ethan looking like every groom in every magazine, smiling, confident, blissfully happy. The image seared itself into my mind like a scar. For months afterward, I felt hollow. Like someone had carved me out from the inside. I dated here and there, but no one stuck. How could they? My heart was still chained to Ethan, no matter how much I hated myself for it. But here's where the story takes another turn, one I never saw coming. About a year after the wedding, I got a call from Jenna. We hadn't spoken since the lake house incident. Hearing her voice again sent a chill down my spine. She didn't waste time on small talk. "Can we meet?" she asked. I almost said no. But something in her tone, shaky, desperate, made me agree. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She looked thinner, paler, her eyes shadowed like she hadn't slept in weeks. This wasn't the radiant newlywed plastered all over Instagram. She stirred her latte with trembling hands. "I don't know how to say this," she started, "but I think Ethan's cheating on me." For a moment I thought I misheard. Ethan? The golden boy. The one who'd always been able to convince everyone, including me, that he was loyal, steady, solid. I almost laughed at the irony. "With who?" I asked cautiously. She shook her head. "I don't know. He's secretive with his phone, comes home late, acts distant, but last week I found a receipt in his jacket, from a hotel, on a Tuesday." I sat there, my mind spinning. Part of me felt vindicated, like maybe karma was finally catching up to him. But another part of me, the part that still loved him despite everything, felt sick. Jenna leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Has he reached out to you? Be honest, I need to know." And here's the kicker, he had. Late night texts. "Miss you. Wish things were different." Little breadcrumbs I tried to ignore, telling myself they didn't mean anything. But sitting there across from his wife, I realized they meant everything. I lied. I told her no. I couldn't bring myself to twist the knife in her any deeper. But walking home, the truth gnawed at me. Ethan hadn't changed. He never chose fully. Not me. Not her. He wanted the comfort of both, the safety net of knowing we'd always be there. A month later, Jenna filed for separation. Word traveled fast in our hometown. Ethan looked shocked when I bumped into him at a mutual friend's barbecue. He cornered me by the cooler, eyes wide, like I was the only person who could still save him. "She left," he said simply, his voice breaking. "She thinks I cheated. You know I'd never..." But I cut him off. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. Not anymore." He stared at me, speechless. For once, he didn't have an answer. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The boy I'd loved all my life wasn't the man standing in front of me. He never had been. But the story wasn't done unraveling yet. Because just when I thought I'd closed that chapter for good, Ethan did something that forced me to question everything all over again. He asked me to move in with him. When Ethan asked me to move in with him, I thought he was out of his mind. His separation from Jenna wasn't even final, and here he was, standing on my porch with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder like some lost soldier coming home from war. "I don't want to be alone," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "And you're the only person who's ever really understood me." Every rational part of me screamed no, Delwyn. This was toxic, dangerous, destined for disaster. But then he looked at me with those same eyes I'd known since childhood, the ones that had always disarmed me, and against my better judgment, I said yes. At first, it felt like everything I'd dreamed of. Cooking dinner together, watching Netflix on the couch, falling asleep tangled up in each other like we were finally where we were supposed to be. It was intoxicating. Like the years of pain and longing had finally paid off. But beneath the surface, the cracks were already forming. Ethan never talked about Jenna. Not directly. But her presence haunted everything. He still had their wedding photo stashed in a box he hadn't thrown away. He still wore the watch she gave him for their anniversary. Some nights, I'd wake up to find him scrolling through old pictures on his phone, his face unreadable. And then, there were the lies. Small at first. He'd say he was working late, but I'd find receipts for bars across town. He'd promise me a weekend together, only to cancel last minute. Every time I confronted him, he had an excuse ready, smooth, practiced, almost believable. Almost. One night, after a particularly nasty argument about his disappearing axe, I went digging. I know, I shouldn't have. Snooping is a line you can't uncross. But something in my gut told me I needed to know. I went through his laptop while he was in the shower. And what I found made my blood run cold. Emails. Dozens of them. To women I didn't recognize. Flirty, suggestive, some outright explicit. Arrangements to meet up. Compliments about their looks, promises he'd call them later. My hands shook as I scrolled, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just emotional weakness. This was a pattern. A lifestyle. Ethan wasn't torn between me and Jenna. He was stringing along countless women, all while making each of us feel like we were his one. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, I confronted him. Threw the laptop on the bed and demanded an explanation. He didn't deny it. Didn't even flinch. Instead, he said something that still echoes in my head. "I can't help it. I need more. But that doesn't mean I don't love you." "Gee." I laughed. A bitter, broken sound. "That's not love, Ethan. That's greed." He tried to spin it, to paint himself as some tortured soul who couldn't control his impulses, who just needed me to be patient while he figured himself out. But for the first time in my life, I didn't cave. I told him to get out. He left that night, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. For weeks, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, just silence. I thought maybe it was over for good. Maybe I'd finally broken free. But Ethan wasn't done with me. Not yet. Because one evening, months later, Jenna showed up at my door again. And she wasn't alone. She had a little boy with her. Ethan's son. When I opened the door and saw Jenna standing there with a child clinging to her leg, I froze. The boy couldn't have been older than 3. Brown curls, big hazel eyes, Ethan's eyes. There was no mistaking it. "Can we talk?" Jenna asked, her voice steady but her hands gripping the boy's shoulders like she was afraid he'd vanish. I let them in. My apartment suddenly felt too small, the air too heavy. The little boy toddled to my couch and started playing with the throw pillows, while Jenna sat down at my kitchen table. "He's Ethan's," she said flatly, as if ripping off a Band-Aid. "His name's Noah." My chest tightened. All this time, Ethan never said a word. Not once in all those late-night calls, not once while we were living together. I'd been carrying torches for a man who'd been a father in secret. "Why are you here?" I asked, My voice sharper than I intended. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, though she kept her chin high. Because I thought you should know the truth. And because I can't do this anymore. He's your problem now, if you even want him. It all came tumbling out then. How Ethan had gotten her pregnant their last year of college. How he'd proposed because it seemed like the right thing. How he promised her he'd change, be faithful, be a husband and father she could rely on. And how every single one of those promises had shattered. He's not just a cheater, she said, her voice trembling. He's a liar. He'll tell you whatever you want to hear and mean none of it. I stayed because I thought I was protecting Noah. But I'm done. Me. And you. I wanted to argue. To defend him. Out of habit more than belief. But deep down, I knew she was right. I'd seen the lies. I'd lived them. When she left, Noah trailing behind her like a shadow, I sat in silence for hours. My entire history with Ethan replayed in my head like a cruel montage. Our childhood, our teenage years, the kiss on the dock, the promises, the betrayals. And suddenly, it all looked different. Not romantic. Not faded. Just broken. And then, Ethan showed up. 2 days later, pounding on my door like the world was ending. His hair was a mess, his eyes bloodshot, his words spilling out in desperate fragments. Jenna told you, didn't she? About Noah, about everything. For the first time, I didn't feel weak hearing those words. I didn't feel chosen. I felt pity. Ethan, I said, steady and calm in a way I never thought possible. You don't love me. You don't love her. You don't even love yourself. You just love not being alone. He went pale, like I'd struck him. He begged. He cried. He tried to hold me. But I didn't cave. Not this time. I told him to leave, and when he refused, I threatened to call the cops. That finally did it. He left, slamming the door behind him, his voice echoing down the hallway. You'll regret this. But I never did. Because here's the real twist. Months later, after the dust settled, Jenna and I found our way back to each other. Not as best friends, not like before, but as something steadier, more honest. We coexisted for Noah's sake, sharing stories, sometimes even laughing at how blind we both had been. One night over wine she said, you know, maybe we were both in love with the idea of Ethan, not the reality. And she was right. Ethan wasn't my soulmate. He wasn't even a decent partner. He was the boy I grew up with, yes, but he wasn't the man I needed. Noah grew into a bright, funny little kid, and I found myself part of his life in ways I never expected. Not as a mother, not as a replacement, but as me. A constant. Someone steady in a world where Ethan was a ghost who drifted in and out. And slowly, as I healed, I realized something. The story of Ethan wasn't my great love story. It was my cautionary tale. The unraveling of the girl who spent too long waiting for someone who never deserved her. The rebuilding of a woman who finally chose herself. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something better. Because the last unexpected twist? 6 months ago, I met someone new. Someone who shows up when he says he will. Someone who makes me feel safe, not crazy. Someone who reminds me every day that love isn't supposed to be a war. It's supposed to be home. And for the first time in my life, I think I've finally found mine.